And we're back.
Great. Ready to get started?
Yes, go ahead. Take it away, Bruce.
Okay, well, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us for another Truth Action Project forum. We host these every month on various topics of interest to the truther community. And while I'm sure you've probably seen in your social media feeds recently photos of very strange and unnatural cloud formations. A lot of people have been looking up and noticing them for the first time. So that's what we're going to be talking about today is how warfare is being waged against us from the sky. Now, one of the biggest reasons why we feel this topic needs to be addressed is because we are in the middle of a health and chronic disease crisis. In terms of life expectancy alone, the United States is now hovering around 50th in the world. Think about that. The world's richest country, 50th in life expectancy, the worst in the developed world. So clearly, something is poisoning us. And we already know that there are toxins, including carcinogenic glyphosate, found throughout the food and water supply. So why wouldn't the skies also be polluted is the next question. And of course, officially, this issue is still treated as a conspiracy theory, not a subject for serious people. But when we start looking into it, we discover that there is a paper trail that leads from the typical foundations, think tanks, and government agencies. We can find this subject openly discussed in government literature. Several mainstream news stations have featured guests who openly promoted geoengineering as a positive solution to tackle climate change. Some of us might even be familiar with the military experiments used during the Vietnam War to change the weather. But how do we navigate our way through all of this when there's so much clickbait and fear-mongering material about the topic out there that doesn't appear trustworthy or well-researched? So today we put together a panel of experts who have been studying different aspects of geoengineering to help separate fact from fiction and assemble an accurate picture of what's really going on for us. And our first guest tonight, Bruce Douglas, is a returning guest from last month's show. Bruce Douglas has been studying weather engineering for over 15 years. He's spoken at and organized conferences on the topic, including Consciousness Beyond Chemtrails. And more recently, he was the founding member of the Maui Community Investigation Team, shining a spotlight on the unusual fires that took place there last year. Bruce, thank you for joining the show. This is becoming a more mainstream discussion, and I know you've been studying this issue for many years, and you've got a theory that the chemtrails discussion is not really what we think it is.
That's true. And I first woke up to that fact about 20 years ago when I really looked at what was going on in the sky and looked at the chemtrails and realizing that what I'm seeing in the sky does not add up to a little bit of chemtrail coming out of the back of a plane, and started to look at it. So I've got a little PowerPoint presentation I'm going to go through and um, try to shed some light on the whole subject. Um, let's see here. So, basically how our weather is being engineered, or how chemtrails are not what we've been told they are. So, get my clicker working. Stratospheric aerosol geoengineering, SAG. That's basically what we're talking about. Aerosols that are injected into the stratosphere. Geoengineering is what they call it. I prefer to call it weather engineering, call it what it actually is. Geoengineering is a group of scientists who claim they want to sometime in the future manipulate the climate. And what's been going on has been a heavy program for at least 30 years. But first, I got to get a little science down so we understand the words that I'm saying. The troposphere is the area where all of our clouds basically happen. All of our cumulus clouds, and it tops off at a place called the tropopause between the stratosphere and the troposphere. That's the area where the jet streams happen. And in the stratosphere, basically it gets, you see the temperature over here, it gets colder and colder as you come up. But suddenly when you hit the stratosphere, the temperature starts actually getting warmer. Something shifts up there because the air is so thin. There's normally no clouds in the stratosphere except polar stratospheric clouds, the North and South Pole. It's the only natural clouds that happen in the stratosphere. Planes fly in the stratosphere, and the middle part of the stratosphere is the ozone layer where the ions are. So I'm going to be talking about the stratosphere and the troposphere and the tropopause, the area between, which is where the jet streams happen. So you'll see the natural clouds, are all here at the top of Mount Everest, about as high as the highest natural clouds happen. So if you look up stratospheric clouds, you will only find references on polar stratospheric clouds because the stratosphere at the North and South Pole is half the distance from the surface of the planet at the North and South Pole, and it's cold there, and you can get clouds in the stratosphere. But normally you don't get natural clouds in the stratosphere. And you look it up, it says here, the stratosphere is very dry. Unlike the troposphere, it rarely allows clouds to form. In other words, a thunderhead may reach up into the stratosphere, in a really big storm. And occasionally it may break off and then dissipate a short period, but you can't generate clouds in the stratosphere because there's no moisture up there. So if you see clouds in the stratosphere, by definition, they're not natural. So clouds are found almost exclusively in the troposphere. The stratosphere is very dry. Yet an occasional veil of clouds are observed above the troposphere. So the jet streams run between the stratosphere and the troposphere, and there's an in the northern hemisphere, there's a tropical one and a one higher up as well. So what are stratospheric aerosol clouds? What do they look like? Well, when you're in Hawaii and you're close to where they're generating it, it's very, distinctive. We all have seen these sort of cloud layers, especially these wispy cotton candy looking clouds that are in the stratosphere higher than planes fly. So we're all used to seeing these strange finger-like things. And when you're close to where they generate these clouds from boats and land bases, it's very like this. And as you get further away from it, it becomes more of just a haze type of phenomena. So as it gets further away, it'll break up into these things. Now here you'll see the natural tropospheric clouds, which are between 3,000 and 7,000 feet. And then you're going to see the stratospheric clouds that are higher than planes fly. They're up around 30,000 feet. So there's two distinct layers, and they go two distinct different directions. Again, you can see some natural clouds down below and the stratospheric clouds above. And we've all gotten used to seeing this sort of thing. This is more of a dispersed pattern as it goes away. You have to kind of know what elevation you're looking at. And in Hawaii, it's very easy. That's where I live because the trade winds take the natural clouds one direction and the stratospheric clouds another direction. So if you get up on a plane, that's the wing of the plane, and you get above the natural cloud layer into the stratosphere, it's very obvious if there's clouds higher than the plane flies or at the same level as the plane flies, those are stratospheric aerosol clouds. Those are not natural clouds, they're artificial. Again, there's the wing of the plane, and you see clouds higher than the planes fly. That's the stratospheric clouds that I'm talking about. And when you look at them from satellites from above, you'll see the natural clouds, and you'll see this other layer of clouds here. It's in the bottom of the picture. And you'll see all this wispy type of stuff. It's not the natural clouds. So from above, from these static pictures, that's how it looks. Again, you'll see the natural clouds down here, and you see the stratospheric clouds here. Here it is totally obliterating the Hawaiian Islands from above. So from above and below, that's what it looks like. Now, I first woke up to this fact when about 20 years ago, suddenly there was a big storm that came out of nowhere. The birds were chirping, and suddenly this cloud layer hit. There was thunder, lightning, big wind, and 10 minutes later, it suddenly dissipated. And I went to the satellite to see, my God, that wasn't natural. What was it? And I looked out and I saw right off the shore of Hawaii, right in here, suddenly, these are like every 20, 30-minute shots. This big cloud appeared out of nowhere, poofed up, went over the Hawaiian Islands and disappeared, went back to nothing again. I thought, no, that was not natural. Where did that come from? And it started my investigation of trying to understand what's happening. So let's take a look at this. This is an aerosol generator. This is an old school machine. This picture's been around for a while. They have them much smaller, but when they first did it about 30 years ago, this is what the machines looked like. Very big, very loud, very clunky, and would generate clouds, would then rise up into the stratosphere. And you can see it rising up there from where it's done. And you can see here where poof, all of a sudden it's going straight up toward the stratosphere. And this reporter is very exciting because he says that cloud's going to create rain somewhere, and there's rain happening. He's so happy and excited. He's beside himself. So this is an example of a big land-based aerosol generator, and how it can put out the clouds and create that. Now, what they're using to create this, we all know if we measure what was coming down in the rain, we see mostly aluminum, and we see barium, strontium, cadmium, nickel, zinc, and a bunch of other metals. It has the same fingerprint as coal fly ash. Coal fly ash is a waste product from the coal industry. When you burn coal at extremely high temperatures, the natural minerals in coal become nano-sized, and they become ionic. And so then you can use electrostatic precipitators in the coal stacks and pull these ions out and get the nasty heavy metals out of the stacks. And that's the scrubbers that are used in the coal plants. And that electrostatic precipitators are also called. And that is a waste product, which then, what do you do with? Well, they make road beds out of it. It's really fine metallic stuff. And they're trying to figure out what it is. Well, that appears to be what's being used in these aerosol generators, because it has the same fingerprint of the same ratio of the same minerals we see in coal fly ash, and we see what's in the rain that's coming down. So let's show where it generates from. Now, you'll see two distinct layers of clouds. You'll see that in this case, the yellow, or during the daytime, it changes color, and the white is extremely reflective, and you see it coming from one point source. You'll see it from planes as you fly. Again, these are pictures of when we're flying over it. And you'll see this when you're flying. Now, when I was a kid, I never saw clouds higher than where we're flying. But now we do see clouds higher than you're flying in the stratosphere. We'll also see some of these type of things. These are really, exotic. This is in Montana. These pictures where suddenly from a land base, an aerosol thing was generated. You see it's going out, being expelled at extremely high velocity, rising up, and will shoot up into the stratosphere, hit the high street stratospheric winds, and take off in the stratospheric wind direction. So these are some of those pictures that you'll see. Here's Denver. Again, they have these generators up in the mountains, kind of hidden away, usually on military land that you can't go to. And they'll eject it into a cloud layer so you don't necessarily see it. Or a lot of times they'll do it at night. Here they did it in broad daylight and created this insane cloud. Where did that come from? It just instantly appears out of nowhere. Germany, same thing. This, you can really see one of those in action. So this is obvious because you can see how it comes from a point source and goes out in all directions. At first, I called this a chem bomb. And now I kind of regret I used that term because other people are using it. It's more of an aerosol generator because it's not actually a bomb of an explosion. It's like you just saw an aerosol generator that expels these things out. And these days, you got generators that can do a massive amount very quickly. I would love to get pictures of those new school aerosol generators. So these are some of them point source when you actually see it happening. I've also been on some flying around. I'll see, the source coming from down below. Now I look on the satellite before I fly and I see where aerosols are being generated out in the ocean from ships, or the aerosol generators are on the ships, and I see them happening. And so when I'm flying, I know what I'm looking for. And I say, that's it right there. I found it. As I'm flying, every time I go someplace, I'm always looking at this. Every day I'm looking at satellite images. I'm looking up in the sky, comparing what I see in the satellite, looking at the weather pattern. And this one, it was exciting to me because I actually got a picture of it in its fresh generation and going up into the stratosphere. You already see some of those wispy clouds in the stratosphere already. There's land bases, and since coal fly ash seems to be what they're using, it appears that at some of the coal power plants, they're generating these sort of things. I actually saw that for myself in Denver one time, or I saw a coal plant and there were clouds, stratospheric clouds, and this strange weather pattern. And I saw this type of appearance coming from it. And this is a shot somebody else got. And you can see how it's, there's a regular smokestack. It's not coming from that. It's coming from something around it, and it's rising up high, and then it starts to dissipate and go into the stratospheric wind direction. So you people on the mainland, I want more researchers to start looking at satellites, looking at where they're coming from, and try to find the sources for them. Here's another one picture I got where an aerosol was being generated in Asia and going up into the stratosphere and taking off in the winds. Here's another one I caught going across Asia over Borneo, where there was the mountain ranges where they were shooting aerosols, and I could see this big cloud, boom, going up into the stratosphere, shearing off in the high-speed stratospheric winds and going on its merry way. So here you see it's going up, and it starts to go to the left, which is the stratospheric wind direction, and it's shearing off. It's getting above the troposphere and into the stratosphere. So you can see where it's being generated down below in the mountain peaks or somewhere in the mountains, rising up above the tropospheric clouds into the stratosphere. Here's another one where you can see the point source happening and going away. So again, I'm looking for these whenever I'm flying so I can hopefully see it from the air. Here's another one I got from a distance where you can see where it's being generated. It rises up. So you can see it starting right about here. It goes for a while, it rises up, and then it hits the stratosphere, shears in the high-speed stratospheric winds, and creates the stratospheric clouds higher than the planes are flying. I'd love to get one close up, but planes don't fly into them, they fly by them. But I've fortunately gotten pictures of that phenomena happening. Here's another one where, again, I'm looking at the satellite. I know where it's happening, where now I'm flying by it, and I get to look, and then I get to see it. Here's another one of those shots from a distance where, again, the cloud rises up, hits the stratospheric winds, and it's not just a big thunderhead, it's an aerosol cloud. Zooming in close. See it billowing up. You see the stratosphere going above the tropospheric clouds up into the stratosphere, and it's just the beginning of a generation. Here you see one that's a little bit older. It's been generating cloud for a while, but you see where it's pillowing up from the center and creating the stratospheric clouds from a point source generator. You can't instantly create a cloud out of nothing, basically. There's not anything there that would generate that cloud any other way. So what happens when a plane flies by or near an aerosol cloud in the stratosphere? Now remember, there's no moisture in the stratosphere. What's happening is these aerosol generators are sequestering the moisture in the troposphere. It rises up into the stratosphere where there is no moisture and creates stratospheric clouds. But you had to get that moisture from somewhere. You can't get it in the stratosphere because there's no moisture up there. You have to get it, sequester it in the troposphere down below. And a plane has a lot of moisture of combustion. So planes create moisture in the combustion. And what's happening is the moisture of combustion nucleates on the aerosols that are already there, on little nanoparticles of aluminum, barium, strontium, and all the other things they add to the mix. And so you'll see a chemtrail whenever there's an aerosol cloud. And when you don't see an aerosol cloud, you don't see a chemtrail. So every time I see a chemtrail, what we call a chemtrail, and I'm renaming them aerosol trails to be more exact, there's always an aerosol cloud in the background. And you look through all people's shots and here, aerosol clouds, no aerosol clouds, no aerosol trails. And you see, and I'm looking and I know where these clouds are coming from. So you'll see the crisscrosses because there's two different patterns, east, west, and north, south, especially up and down the West Coast, where there's patterns of airline flights. And a pilot will never fly through somebody else's aerosol trail. They're always going to go a little off it. So I've been looking now since I figured this out 20 years ago. I've been looking for a real chemtrail where there's no aerosol clouds in the background. And I've been looking for 20 years. I haven't found one yet. Not to say it doesn't exist. There are machines and there are generators you can put in a cloud. But again, you can't add something to a jet fuel. I actually went in Los Angeles to the jet fuel formulators and asked them, is there any way you could add aluminum, barium, strontium nanoparticles to the jet fuel? And they said, absolutely not. It's so highly purified. We have to have detectors to see if there's any impurities. It's rejected. It can't happen. It's a fantasy. So we have flight trackers, and we know that most of those things creating what we call chemtrails are commercial airline flights going from here to there. You can track it. And they don't have the nozzles on them and all that sort of stuff. They are commercial jets, and you cannot add something to the jet fuel. It's scientific fantasy. So again, I look at sites, I look at everyone's things, I can just about always pick out aerosol clouds in the background whenever there's aerosol trails. So whenever I'm somewhere like Los Angeles, and if there's no aerosols in the sky, there's no chemtrails. When there's aerosol in the sky, boom, it suddenly gets full of aerosols trails. So again, you can see here in the background, aerosol clouds. So what I'm saying is what we call chemtrails is not the cause, it's a symptom. It's an indicator that there's aerosol clouds in the background. Maybe they're diffuse, because after a while of traveling through the air, they get kind of diffuse. Or maybe they're solid. Here, it's a diffuse stratospheric haze. It's not like it's the wispy clouds, because obviously it's probably generated a long distance away. But you see the aerosol clouds, and you'll see what I call aerosol trails. So this was an alleged hurricane. Before it gets to the Hawaiian Islands, it totally petered out. But then right at the Hawaiian Islands, suddenly right offshore, you see this sudden burst of a cloud being formed out of nothing, covering all the Hawaiian Islands and creating heavy rains and storms of an alleged hurricane. Now, real hurricanes spin and have sustained force winds. These have not sustained force winds. They're gusty, crazy winds. So again, here's an alleged hurricane. It's not spinning. It's just aerosols. It's from a boat. They're blowing off. The red is the most distinct. You can see the colorations down here in this colorized rendering. It dissipates. It peters out. And then boom, right offshore the Big Island, they blow off an aerosol from a boat right offshore. And boom, it creates these crazy winds knocking over trees and having a whole big thing. on an election day, by the way, so nobody in the progressive area of Gila would vote. So I was curious they did that on election day. And that was an alleged hurricane. So we all know that, you know, climate change caused from CO2. We all have pretty much woken up to the fact that the CO2 cause of climate change has been pretty well debunked. Most of what I see as climate change, these extremes of weather, are engineered. I can look at them and I can see the pattern of how they're adding aerosols and using that to generate it. And I've been saving the screenshots from all the major weather patterns and can show that. So here you can see where there's a boat right offshore, you know, generating these aerosols, and you see the speed of the boat basically going to the south and creating this whole big cloud layer that's just like covering. Here you can see really obvious. It's the point source right there leading on. And you see it going right on down the shore, hitting San Francisco and creating all this crazy weather storms and stuff off the side. And whenever you see this pattern of point source generation of a cloud out of nothing, there's no thunderheads there creating that cloud at that point source. That's what I'm calling a boat out there with an aerosol generator creating that cloud out of thin air. They're also doing it from land bases on the mainland. So here you can look over Nebraska, Oklahoma, and you see the point source generating. Here's one in Texas, right there. It's an often place I see at this spot right here in Texas. There's military bases and stuff in that area. So my guess is they're doing it from military bases, but you people who live in the mainland, I'd love for you to be watching the satellite images and saying, okay, where did that cloud come from out of nowhere? Here's another one that created hurricanes across Nebraska. You can see where a point source, suddenly this huge cloud is created and does the same sort of thing. Here's one in the Hawaiian Islands, where boom, right offshore, suddenly they blow off an aerosol that goes right over the islands and creates this crazy intense storm that only lasts for a short period of time and disappears. And here you can see here where they're generating a cloud, and then short time later, it's completely covering the Hawaiian Islands. You can't even see it in a short amount of time. Not a natural phenomena. You can look at it from Google Earth, and you can see a lot from Google Earth because you see the natural tropospheric clouds down here, but these are infrared shots, and the infrared sees heat or reflectivity. So it's going to see colder because it's clouds high in the stratosphere. They're colder. They're denser than what's down below, but mainly they're reflective. They have, you know, aluminum in it that's highly reflective. So they're going to dominate the screen, and they can't hide it from the infrared satellite. Infrared, again, seeing heat or reflectivity. In this case, the key is reflectivity of the whole thing. So you can somewhat see it, but you don't get that, you know, the infrared loops that you can get on the NOAA satellite images. And you see the loops over a period of time. You can see a lot more happening. But again, you can see the point source happening and traveling for a long distance. You know, you can see here it rising and creating it and going for, you know, 1,000 miles. Well, clouds don't travel in the stratosphere if they're 1,000 miles. Also, especially out here in Hawaii, it's obvious because our trade winds go this direction. And the stratospheric winds go the other direction like this. So it's really easy to understand the two layers of what's happening. This is the stratospheric, starting from a point source, going in the stratospheric wind direction. The other things down below that are really light are in the tropospheric wind direction, the trade winds. Again, a point source out in the ocean, glittering and rising up. So that looks to me like 2 or 3 boats out there with aerosol generators on them, putting out the aerosol blasts. So there's another way of really proving what you're looking at, either, you know, the height of it, the type of the clouds, but also a new phenomenon never seen before, only the past 20 years, called noctoluminescent clouds, where there's basically, here's a picture, the sun's already set over the West Maui's. You know, the sun is already down on the other side, but then after the sunset, suddenly these stratospheric clouds sitting at 30, 40,000 feet light up from the underside because they're so high. The sun's already long set. These are the natural clouds over here, so it's already dark. But then suddenly these stratospheric clouds light up. And if you look across the sky from one side to the other, here's those wispy stratospheric clouds lighting up clear on the other side of the sky, called noctoluminescent clouds, clouds that light up at night after dark when they shouldn't be lighting up. So whenever you see these noctoluminescent clouds, that will tell you those are clouds not at 3 to 8,000 feet like these natural clouds down below. These are stratospheric clouds. So here you can see all the dark clouds are the tropospheric natural clouds. Up above is the wispy stratospheric clouds. And I verify that when I look at the weather satellites. So I know, okay, this is an aerosol day. So there's aerosols coming at us. And you look again all the way on the other side of the sky, and the clouds on the other side of the sky, the stratospheric clouds light up from the underside because they're so high up and the sun's already set that the sun is able to light them up from the bottom side. Noctoluminescent clouds. Only in the past 30 years have we seen this phenomena happening since the whole process of aerosol generators has been going on. So stratospheric clouds, this in Colorado, you see some chemtrails in it. So that indicates those are stratospheric clouds. And all the way on the other side of the sky, it lights up. Now, I know from the satellite images that these aerosol clouds are coming over us. But that's it. That's another way of telling, are those stratospheric clouds, yes or no? Do they light up at night? And there's the indicator of a chemtrail within just where the aerosol clouds are, not outside the aerosol cloud area, because the moisture of combustion from the plane nucleates the moisture on the nanoparticles of aluminum and other metals that are already present in the aerosol cloud, more appropriately called an aerosol trail. Now, over the time, stratospheric haze has been increasing. Now, this is from 15 years from 1994 to 2009. But you see this graph of what's happening, and we see a general rise in the level of atmospheric haze that's in the stratosphere that shouldn't be there. Now, this is Pinatubo was a volcanic eruption that happened. A volcano will take the earth metals, heat them up really high temperature, make them nano, expulse them out of the volcanic eruption. It'll sequester the moisture in the troposphere where there is moisture. It'll rise up into the stratosphere, and it'll travel around the whole planet, making a stratospheric haze around the planet. That's a natural product of a volcanic eruption. And you see it took about 2 years, but after 2 years, mostly it fell apart in a year later. But by 2 years, it came back down to its natural level of aerosols in the sky. So that's what a volcanic eruption does. Now, what's happening here is we're doing the same thing with coal. We burn coal at extremely high temperature. It nanoizes the minerals. It makes it ionic. And then that's pulled out as coal fly ash. Then it's put in an aerosol generator, or most likely, I can't say for sure, but this is my latest conjecture of what it is. And then it's expulsed out the aerosol generator, sequestering any moisture in the troposphere there, where it rises in the stratosphere, where there is more moisture, and makes a stratospheric haze. So we all know about the HARP installation in Alaska. Now, this HARP is the old school. It's like 80s and 90s technology. Now they got mini HARPs, and this thing is basically obsolete. But at the time, it was an ionospheric heater. An incredible amount of power is shot through these beams as radio waves. They can aim them at a certain spot in the ionosphere where the ions are, the ozone layer. And the radio waves can interact with the ions because they're ionic, and so radio waves can interact with them. They excite the molecules in the ozone layer, and it makes it go higher and higher. And it'll raise up and make a bubble in the ionosphere by pointing energy at it, heating it up and making it rise, called an ionospheric heater. And you can rise it up and then you can suddenly turn it off and make it go boom down below. You can make it rise and go boom. You can make low frequency waves happen. You can also rise it up and then move it across the sky, and you can create a low pressure cell down below and guide weather systems around. But now that we have ionic particles in the stratosphere from the aerosols, they can directly interact with the aerosols and start moving jet streams around. So you see them spraying aerosols into the jet streams, and then suddenly they're directing the jet streams these crazy directions using ionospheric heaters. Interestingly enough, when the Japan earthquake happened, HAARP was putting out 2.5 hertz, which Nikola Tesla, who invented this process of ionospheric heaters, knew that 2.5 hertz is the frequency of an earthquake. And as soon as the earthquake starts in Japan, HAARP shuts off again. And shortly after that, Raytheon, who had the contract for running HAARP, withdrew their contract, didn't want to be the contractor for HAARP anymore. And the HAARP installation shut down until they can find a new contractor to run it. Raytheon, by the way, is also the same company that runs the radar and has the computer that puts out the weather patterns and the predictions for the whole world that everyone just looks at and reads. So the very people who are involved in creating the weather are predicting the weather. It's very easy to predict the weather when you're the one creating it. So that's why they can predict weather 2 weeks out before there's any sign of it happening. Say, oh, a big storm's going to come. Nothing's there. Then kaboom, a storm appears out of nowhere. And they can say, oh, that's climate change. Haha. Nope, that's weather engineering. So ionospheric heaters, HAARP is just one type, but ionospheric heaters is what's happening. And they're worldwide phenomena. You know, Ukraine has a big one. Australia, of course, HAARP. You know, there's other ones in other places that are these big dishes. And now there's HAARP domes as well, where they're mini HAARPs. So they don't have to have these big installations. They can be small. And when you have multiples of them, you can do it. This is the HAARP dome that lives on top of this massive platform that travels around the Pacific Theater. It's huge. It's got massive capacitor banks on it so that you can have, power generators there, and the capacitor banks can grab the power and then it can release it in big bursts. And these domes, now this is not NextRad. This is separate from NextRad. Those NextRad stations are low power. They don't have high power energies going to them, so they can't be affecting the ionosphere. These are ionospheric heaters that have to have massive power banks that are a part of it. And so that's why you see these installation of capacitors and stuff to hold and power generators to power them up. This is the picture I took driving down the highway. There it is in Pearl Harbor, coming in for repairs and stuff. And I wish I knew where this installation was various times, but you see these same sort of domes on mountaintops in various places, not the round spheres that are on top of pillars. Those are NextRad. Those are radar detectors. But you see these domes that are like this from a big base. And those are what appear to be ionospheric heaters in most installations. And they're all over the world. All military bases have it. Big ships have smaller versions of this. They're everywhere. HAARP, the most powerful ionospheric heater on Earth. And that was from 2015. Now it's old school, so it's a whole different world. And, this is the University of Alaska that was running the high frequency active oral research program, HAARP. But again, this is now obsolete. It's old school. Now they got the mini ones, and they put multiple domes in different places, all aiming at the same place, the ionosphere, or the same spot in a aerosol cloud, and you can have powerful effects. This is from a patent, using, aiming them different directions, bouncing the energy off the ionosphere, all sorts of different things they can do to take multiple installations and point them at the targets where they want to do. So let's just take a look at one hurricane. I could show you the lots of them, but Acapulco was a big one. Was it engineered or natural? I'll let you decide. So there was a tropical storm that basically fizzled out. And then suddenly you'll see an aerosol injection going into it, which is what I see in hurricanes, where they suddenly from a boat inject a massive amount of aerosols into it. Then suddenly it starts to spin. But what's curious, these things spin in the stratosphere. You will notice normal clouds right down here go in one direction. And these particles here, way higher above it in the stratosphere, going in a different direction, opposite the natural cloud layer. So the aerosols, they're ejected, they rise up into the stratosphere. Then, since they're ionic particles, the ionospheric heater antennas, we call HARP, but that's just one thing, can then actually interact with them and start to make them spin. And they spin them up in the stratosphere, and then it affects what's down below it. But it's actually a stratospheric hurricane. And often on these hurricanes, I'll see natural clouds going right below it like this, with the stratospheric wind blowing. People in here have seen these hurricanes, alleged hurricanes, and the buoys out in the ocean aren't even showing any wind, yet the pattern's going right over it. Why? Because it's up in the stratosphere. Then it gets offshore and they blow off a big aerosol in order to do it. So here you're going to see that in action. So there it is, basically fizzled out as a storm. There's the aerosol injection, boom, from the side. And then they do another big aerosol blast into it. And then suddenly it starts to spin up at high speed. Again, it's all ionic particles, aerosols, so they can get it spinning really fast. And these clicks are every 15 minutes. And boom, they get it spinning in no time at all from absolutely nowhere. And boom, it hits Acapulco. As soon as it hits shore, it dissipates very quickly because it's not a natural phenomena. They blew off a few more aerosols offshore to create some more rain because there actually wasn't any rain in that hurricane. It was all just wind, but they actually got it spinning. Okay, I'm gonna let you see this one more time. So you see there, see it fizzling out. Boom, there's an aerosol injection into the side, shot into it. Then they do boom, another aerosol blast right in the middle of it. Then it suddenly starts to spin in the stratosphere. You see the things going, normal clouds just going one direction, these stratospheric ones a different direction. They get it spinning really fast for a short period of time, and then boom, as soon as it hits shore, it dissipates, and then they blow some aerosols offshore just to make sure it gets some rain and stuff, so it looks like it was a real hurricane, which it wasn't. That was the Acapulco one. See it again from that, the aerosol injection going in. You can see how it shoots in the side. And then there's an aerosol blast. There's actually some missing slides with it. I don't know what happens in those missing slides, but in the record, they didn't have it. Suddenly starts to spin. You notice the natural clouds going one direction and the stratospheric clouds going another direction. Hits the shore, spins up, and boom, dissipates. And this is, when you look at it from the side, this is how it looks. So what you're going to see here, you're going to see up at the stratospheric level is where all the power and the spin is. And what you see this disk up on top. So it's not a natural hurricane. It's actually a stratospheric hurricane causing what's below it in order to do its thing. Here's another rendering of it here. Again, you'll see it spinning, aerosols injecting. You'll see it spinning up on the top and a rapid, they call it rapid intensification, something we've never seen before, suddenly happening, like Louisiana off the coast, where these storms that should be slowing down, because as storms hit the cooler waters, as they travel north, hit cooler waters, they always break up. And natural, storm, as soon as it gets away from the warm waters at 10 degrees latitude, it breaks up. But what we're seeing now is where a storm breaks up, suddenly aerosols released in it, and then suddenly it spins up and hits the shore and creates all these things. But one of the keys when they hit shore is was it sustained force winds or was it erratic winds going like this and like this? What we're seeing now in these artificial hurricanes, the stratospheric spinning hurricanes, they'll hit the shore, they'll blow off aerosols, and then they'll, I think, take the HARP antennas. I can't see that from satellite images. I can just imagine that's how it's being done because there's aerosols, so the ionospheric heaters can work on the ions and the aerosols, and then they start moving the winds around like this, and these gusty winds that go this direction and that direction from all different things, knocks over trees, makes you think it's a hurricane, but it's not a hurricane because it's not sustained force winds. It's erratic, all sorts of winds. So what can we do about it? I did some chemtrail geoengineering symposiums back when I still thought chemtrails were also happening, before I kind of figured that whole thing out, and even had Michael Murphy, who did the book, What in the World Are They Spraying, come, and other things. I also tried to propose the Maui Clean Sky Ordinance through our county council, saying that no entity may engage in dispersing of aerosols, chemicals, or particulates in the sky to engage in any sort of climate engineering. However, we got it introduced, but it got bounced out because only the state health department has jurisdiction over air pollution. So the corporation council, the lawyers for the thing threw it out because it had to be done on the state level. And I tried to do it on the county level, but now, my gosh, one state has finally done it. I guess we're going to hear about that. I would love to be able to hire a twin engine plane and fly out and actually get close to these aerosol boats and get pictures of them happening. So I'm always looking for sponsors willing to help me do this project to fly out and actually prove the aerosol generators, or you people on the mainland to find out where they're generating out there. And you can probably get closer to them if they're not on military bases, which most of them probably are on military land, and show where the aerosols are happening. Again, easy to see from the infrared satellite images. But the main thing is to stay in love and peace about this, because we're not going to change the world with anger. We're not going to be anger-based people and, gather a lot of people with us. We're going to do it because we love the planet, we love this place, and we all want to make it better and stop these insane programs, which, perfectly lines up with the whole system of saying that climate change is from CO2. So we're getting all these crazy hurricanes and windstorms and things we've never seen before. Must be climate change. Every time they do happens, the corporate propaganda media is yelling, climate change, climate change, climate change, climate change. And pretty soon people believe it's climate change rather than weather engineering. So now that you guys understand what it is, I think the chemtrail program was purposeful misinformation put out there. So we look at, these appearances of a plane creating the cloud, when in fact, it's not even possible because, where's the moisture coming from? If they're injecting nanoparticulates of aluminum, where are they coming up with the moisture to create the clouds? Because there's not enough moisture of combustion. So if you look at this, at the science, you'll realize that it's not even possible. It's not even scientifically possible for those things to happen. So I think that the chemtrail agenda was purposeful misinformation, because it's the appearance, because what appears in the sky looks like it's coming out of the back of the plane. We can all believe in that. I think they purposely pumped that up, fed money to certain websites that pump that information, whether the people realize it or not. There's a lot of shills in this program. When I did the Consciousness Beyond Chemtrails conference, and I was a speaker at that, all the shills showed up. It was just amazing to see them all out there and talking to them, from the Metabunk people and all these other debunker organizations. And, it's loaded with it. So as long as people have the wrong information and, believe it's a chemtrail coming out of the back of the plane and don't actually look at the source of it from boats and land-based dispersal units, we're always going to be fringe and on the side, because we can't prove it's coming from those planes, but we can prove that it's coming from land bases and ocean bases. And that's where we're sequestering the moisture. So I know this information is going to fly right in the face of a lot of people who have, as I believed and thought it was coming from the back of the plane, because that's what it appears to me. But upon deeper scientific investigation, I realized it's something entirely different, and we all have to change our point of view and realize what's happening and start looking at satellite images instead of just what appears in the sky, and looking at the source of where those clouds are coming from. So that's my presentation.
Wow. Well, thank you, Bruce, for putting all that together for us. I mean, you're touching on an intriguing theory here, which is that the land-based ionic generators are doing a lot of the heavy lifting in the creation of these cloud formations, and not the aircraft themselves. I mean, you're suggesting that a lot of standard commercial aircraft crossing through the aerosol trail will leave behind what we've been calling and referring to as a chemtrail. So that's intriguing, and we want to explore these theories and let the facts and the science and the data sort out wherever it may fall. But there is no dispute about which chemicals we're being doused in, that they are toxic, and that it is being done intentionally. So I
The
believe we want.
chemtrail is an indicator that there's aerosols already present in the sky. So we can use what we're calling a chemtrail, which I'm going to rename aerosol trails so that we get it right. When we see an aerosol trail, that means that's an aerosol cloud that already exists up there that the plane is flying at or near.
Interesting. Very interesting. So we'll keep. It's the first. Your research was the first time that I've come across that. But you have the photos of the generators themselves. It's all very interesting. So we'll continue to explore that. But right now, let's pivot over to our next guest. And also, I know we're generating a lot of questions here. Save your questions. We'll get to them at the end after the roundtable. But if not, anybody can join us on the campfire follow-up discussion that we're going to be having this Friday. So let's pivot over now. On last month's show, we covered the Lahaina fire in depth. So in addition to this aerosol spraying, we also have suspicions that many of these so-called wildfires that we've been seeing over these past few years are not natural either. Well, our next guest, Robert Brighteon, has half a century of plant research under his belt. He's an arborist and a professional botanist. He's led hikes for the Sierra Club. He's always camping and cooking on an open campfire. He's got a lot of experience with that. And after the outbreak of these unusual fires, he began investigating many of those sites. He made over 100 trips to 40 different locations and has gathered probably more on-the-ground data and samples than anyone else. Robert, help us understand this other side of the geoengineering discussion of how many of these massive spontaneous forest fires are also another form of weather warfare.
Yeah, it's a huge, tall order here. But thank you, Bruce, for waking me up to the whole chemtrail debacle here. And a lot of this stuff I'm going to talk about probably directly ties into that, because I don't have all the answers. I'm just out there with keen observation skills, analyzing these 40 fire aftermaths. So what I did here, if I can do this correctly here, screen sharing here.
You're screen sharing. You need to select your PowerPoint presentation. There you go. We can see the pictures. Very nice.
Okay. And that looked very good there. You can see
Yep,
it.
looks good.
Yeah. So I've 49 years of studying plants, climbing 130 mountains, backpacking everywhere in the state of California, all elevations, learning most of the flora from wildflowers, ferns, shrubs, trees, and vines. And for 33 years, I've been doing trees specifically for a living. And somewhere along the line, I saw this up in Santa Rosa, California in 2017, and it just made no sense to me at all. I've seen plenty of forest fire aftermaths, at all elevations. None of them ever look like this. And as you can see, I believe it's 4,700 homes were just turned to white ash. Hard to even find black. But what I saw was the trees virtually untouched unless they're right next to homes. And anyway, so a couple months later, I went up there and analyzed the whole city for a whole day. Nothing added up, nothing I'd ever seen, and I was at a loss. So 8 years later, I've gone to 40 of these aftermaths and taken 115 trips to them. And I think only about 3 of them were natural fires where the forest actually burned up like they're supposed to. These last years, 8 years, in California at least, none of the fires that they show you on the media were normal at all. And deep down, I'm going to loosely call them microwaved forest fires. And the forest isn't burning, no matter what anybody says. It's not burning, not at all. The only time I see a tree burned is when it's in close proximity to a creek where there's plenty of water, or next to metals, like a house, metal sheds, things like that. And I will get into that here in a little bit. Back to what Bruce talks about, the different sprays and that are coming down with strontium, barium, and all that, aluminums. I believe at some point they are actually desiccants, and they're hurting our forest, picking on certain species more than others, because I have seen some die back, but not vast forest dying. I haven't not seen that at all. Perhaps a quarter acre of lodgepole pines up in Yosemite, and that could have been another killing thing, something else, a fungus possibly. And so 2.5 years ago, we had fires all around the San Francisco Bay Area. I've analyzed every one. Rarely any of the trees burned. And here you have blue gum eucalyptus, part of the Big Basin State Park where all the redwoods grow. They took the whole park away, burned it all up. But here's the most combustible leaves I know of, are eucalyptus. They would not ignite. The ground's black. The trunks are black. And I'll get into that a little bit later. But the leaves will not ignite. And a cigarette lighter in my hand, I can light these trees on fire. Green leaves, no exception. That's what they do. There are some other species of eucalyptus we have, same sort of thing. I've seen them around the state. They won't burn up. And our California bay leaf is another one. It's in the avocado family or laurel family. And bay leaves, put them in the campfire, you have instant fire everywhere. So I wanted to get into what's going on here. And I don't know where this weapon, if you will, is coming from. I really don't. It's a guess for me. This is the giant Dixie fire we had 2.5 years ago up near the volcano Mount Lassen. It burned somewhere around 1 million acres. And as you can see, the needles didn't burn, but the trunks are on fire. All the way to the top sometimes, but not a needle burned. The ground's brown just from needles falling off the trees later on. Hard to call it a forest fire when the forest actually didn't burn. It was the liquids in the tree, probably the cambial fluids just inside the outer and inner bark. It's the liquids that are on fire, kind of like putting a glass of water in your microwave opposed to a glass of chili or something thick. That water heats up the fastest, and it gets to a point here where it combusts. Just the liquids, though. All the needles dry out, but they will not ignite. I've done this a very long time, and I've never seen anything like this, not even close. But yet in the last 8 years, this is all I see. Sorry, that's not clear. This is an old picture from way back in 1910, I believe. This is the way they're supposed to look. When I backpack and mountain climb, I've gone through these areas, and it's not easy to get through. This is a firestorm, what they really look like. And we're not seeing them anymore. I made up a statement just in the last month. Natural forest fires are on the rare side. And I've got a lot of background to justify saying that. Here's another one. As far as I can tell, this was a natural one. The branches are gone, the needles, the twigs, everything. Sometimes the poles are burned down to a stump. That's the way they normally look. That's not my picture. It's off the internet. Oh, no, that is my picture. That's north of Mount Lassen somewhere. And I believe this was a normal one. Who knows? So that's what I'm finding all over. And at some point I discovered the metals are on fire. Incidentally, this post, the whole fence line looks like this. This is just the best one. As you can see, the nails themselves were on fire. And even between them, the fire goes out. It doesn't climb like flames like to do, climb up. And also, I believe the ground itself is on fire from moisture and the metals that are in the soil, just everyday metals that are present in the soil, even in small doses. I think that and the liquids are actually burning the ground itself, because I see all my posts look like this. Even when there is no grass, no leaves, no combustible materials around them, still the bottoms will look like that. Same fence line, different post. I've never seen this in my life. I'd like to hear a CAL FIRE person just try to tell me what's going on here. Amazing. This is everywhere I go, if I get there quick enough. This one had 12 or 10 or 12 nails. There's still a few left. I brought this home for evidence. In California, they're putting people in jail and framing them that they're the arsonists that started these fires, which to me is impossible unless there's some super scientist, and they're not. So this is from the Oak Fire, west of Yosemite, near the town of Mariposa. And there was anomalies everywhere, of course, but I found that and I had to get a picture and bring it home for evidence. I want to go over some of the materials I find. And I don't believe any of these chemicals coming down are adding to the fire much. Maybe to the metals, things like that, you know, the homes, but the organic matter, I don't call this an accelerant from all these chemicals coming down, raining on us. I don't believe they're accelerants, lest the forest would be gone too, and it's not. So here's your steel belted radial. This is the way I find them. Never partial rubber left, ever. And then I'll see this, and I'll lift it up and I'll really look close. This is maybe 1 out of 200 or 300 tires. I'll look really close, and this is what I find, a polyester cord. Perhaps there's one wire around the edge to keep it on the rim. I think there is a tiny steel cord, but virtually untouched in the 6 feet away from the other tires. Old tractors, farm tractors I'll see in the fields. Their tires are more polyester cord. They're not melted or burned up. So that was a big anomaly right there. To me, the metals were on fire. I had to put in Maui a little bit here. I mostly come from the plant side of this whole equation. The homes are gone. There's hardly any black. It's white ash again. And look at the trees. When the homes are that hot to burn, you'd think the trees would go in a second. But no, a few are wilted, burned up a little bit, but the forest should be gone. And it's not. I had to talk a little bit. That's also Maui. You'll see the windows of the vehicles are melted out. They start melting at 2,500 degrees. Normal car fires or auto fires cannot melt those windows. And I don't think they have been before 8 or 10 years from now. The two fire captains that analyzed Paradise, John Lord and Matt Dakin, 30-year fire captains with their combined 60 years of fire service. They've never seen a window melt out in any vehicle ever. Now, this is all I see. I don't even see a window intact anywhere I go. Also, your aluminum and alloy rims, they're melting out at 1,221 degrees at ground level. That doesn't happen either, but every one I see is melted out. Very similar to 9/11. The cars were just completely toasted. I'm sure everybody's seen that one. I don't know what kept the aluminum melting 6 feet away from the Jeep. This is common now, and they're making it common. Also plastics. If you search long enough at these sites, you will find microwave safe materials, plastic play structures, garden hoses, synthetics, like your flags, your American flag. I've seen those. Trampolines, maybe a few holes, but almost untouched. Microwave safe things are kind of left alone. And your trees, like this one that fell down here, I don't know that species, they're actually burning from the inside out where the most water is, like in a microwave, heating up the water again. And I will see this, the trees burning the most in the entire tree kingdom are the extreme water lovers. The willow, cottonwood, alder, birch. These are the highest water holding capacity trees on the planet, not being aquatic themselves. They're right on the edge of a creek. Not one leaf will be burned, but yet they've burned internally. That's a new one on me. This is Greenville, California, where the plastics just didn't want to melt, but the houses are just missing. This was behind a wall where the cleanup crews that come down your street and take everything off your property, they didn't see it. There was a block wall, and I believe that they just missed it. A little melting, but not puddles of plastic. I'm not sure of this spot. Got it off the internet. This is very common if you get there quick enough. They will come in there, the feds, and they'll clear off your property, every brick and stone. So there's nothing there, like you never had a house. They don't want any evidence left around, which to me is just stealing. And on your left is the sycamore. It's a huge water holding capacity tree. And all in the back look like oak trees. They didn't really burn up, but there's that house just missing. Plastics all over the place, wherever you look. And there's a garden hose also, a couple of them. This is common now. I wanted to talk about Canada. I believe this, yeah, last year's Canada. All the fires were in a straight line. I think some of you have probably studied that and seen that. A lot of these fires around the world are in straight lines. The Australian ones were in straight lines when you look at your satellite images. So here the houses are gone, and there's your kids' plastic play structure. Yeah, I'm finding this a lot. That's Canada also. What did that to that bridge? There's no combustible materials around there. Water, a little tiny bit of grass, no way. Leads me to believe the metals themselves were on fire, like if you were to stick some metal in your microwave, ferrous or non-ferrous. Yeah, amazing picture. I borrowed a couple of these off the internet. I believe this is San Diego or Santa Barbara. Eucalyptus trees around everybody's backyard, and they didn't want to combust, but the homes are just turned to white ash. Trees between the houses turned a little brown. I believe they had the water sucked right out of them. A forest fire that forgets to burn the forest. It's a new one. Santa Rosa, I've been up here probably a dozen times. Your Jack in the Box, your McDonald's, and the gas station are just missing. Not one tree's burned. Poison oak relatives, all three trees, pistachio, California pepper, and one other. Can't think of it right now. African sumac. Nothing there. The combustible materials that we know of don't burn. It's opposite world. Trees are burning from the inside out. This is in a vineyard. To the north of Santa Rosa was Kincaid fire. I don't know how many homes they burned down. There's not a tree around here. It's just a vineyard. But yet the bays and coast live oaks burned from the inside out. These were leaning over the road, so they cut them down and took them away. No hole to get a flame in there, and not a lot of oxygen to have a flame internally. Another person is in jail up here. Calpella fire up by Lake Mendocino. This is a board that's perhaps 30 feet long, a car stop for your front tires. You roll up to the car stop and turn the engine off. About every 8 or 9 feet, there's a post like this with bolts to attach it that's hammered in the ground. The only place that board burned is where these bolts were, and I have 6 or 7 in a row. I just put one on here so you can see what's going on. I'm finding the metals are on fire, whether they're galvanized or not, but not stainless steel. And somebody had an answer for that. I don't know what that was. Stainless steel play sets. Those bolts are not heating up. I don't know anything about the stainless steel. Your guardrails, they all look like this. The posts burn primarily around the big bolts that they're attached to. This is Greenville also. I hope the firemen got away from this. They're nowhere near the forest over there. All the trunks are black. The pine needles fell off after the fact. This is months later. But what can do that to a fire truck? Windows, rims, tires, everything. There's not enough combustible materials around it to warrant this type of burning. This is another one of my pictures. Most of these are all mine, unless it's from the air. This is what your windshields look like, melting out at 2,500 degrees, probably above that to get them to flow and melt down. Who knows? Maybe 27, 2,800 degrees. The gentleman in jail in the Oak Fire, Mariposa, they just grabbed some old man and put him in jail. I've analyzed that place a lot, and some of my best pictures come from there. This is our #1 pine tree in California, the ponderosa pine. It burns up more than any other species in the whole state. Not that flammable, but pines, when you get them hot enough, they burn up fast, especially when you got a firestorm. Well, here, they didn't burn, and these are little ones, 10, maybe 15 feet tall. They forgot to burn. I can light these needles on fire with a cigarette lighter in my hand. Green. Takes a little bit. Pretty soon I can get a flame to sustain on a green needle. On the way to Lake Tahoe, we have Highway 80, a city called Auburn, California. And to the east was the Mosquito Fire. Spent a whole day up there. The whole forest is dead, but I can't say it's burned up. Same anomalies with the cars. No different. This one was nearby out in the California Delta, where all our rivers converge. We had a little fire out there. Isleton was the name of the community, and 21 mobile homes burned up. Here, the mobile homes just completely burned. There's the door frame to the right of the center. What's the wood deck sitting there and not even burned? Not even black on the side of the mobile home. That's a new one. Oh, and these other items also in the foreground. Nothing else burned up, just the mobile home. I talked to the firemen there. They didn't have a clue. And there's your Greenville, that Dixie fire where they put somebody in jail up there also. Their town's missing except for one gas station and a food mart. But you look at the background, ponderosa pine, white fir, red fir, black oak. The forest is dead, but it's not burned up. What kind of, and this is a firestorm that's moving fast. Like Bruce talks about the high winds. Almost all these fires always have an unusually high wind where the fire is traveling very fast. In that case, it's a firestorm, like a blowtorch, and these trees would just be sticks. Didn't happen. I had to talk about Texas. I'm sorry I had to put this picture in there, but anybody knows cattle country, they eat the grass down to 1 or 2 inches tall. Those little fires creeping along the ground, you could just step over them, because I have. You can just step over them and stomp them out. Like, there was no high grass here. I believe these cows or cattle were cooked from the inside out. They were zapped and they didn't even know it. And I have to get into that a little bit. I hear the panhandle of Texas had tons of small cattle ranches, not the big multi-corporation cattle or beef industry, but little farmers or little ranchers. And I don't know how many homes and cattle were eliminated, but I hear it's a high number. I believe it's a war on our food, beef and also chickens. I'm sure some of you have heard about that. But I wanted to include Texas. Oh, that didn't come out. Anyway, yeah, the rims, the windows, same old thing. And that was a terrible fire. The Texas fire was in February. Historically, that's our coldest month, winter. I believe it was around 1 million acres again. Nowadays, they're making any time they want now. They'll just burn your homes down any month, even snow. They don't care. It's very blatant. This one's in the country of Chile. Same anomaly. The cars all look the same, and I see trees everywhere. But if you look hard, there's homes missing all over, here and there. So what's on fire? The metals, the ferrous and non-ferrous materials. That might have been Texas too. I'm not sure. Same stuff. the 3 fires I have seen that look normal, 2 of them were started by cars. The cars caught on fire, they pull over to the side of the freeway. A grass fire goes up the hill, burns maybe a house or some trees, and is quite normal. And one near the Mount Shasta, our big volcano up north, there was a fire there and looked normal enough. The trees were burned up and there were stumps and poles, everything pretty limbless. It might have happened 4 or 5 years ago. Other than that, this is what I'm finding. And this is the lady that's in jail in Redding, California, going on her 3rd year in jail, and they're trying to throw the book at her. Incidentally, I'm talking to some of the lawyers here, and they just disregard me. I like to end with this one. I made this up where you can look at the 10 bullet points I have, or anomalies of all these fires that I find at every site. And there's one, number 7 there I didn't talk about, the steel culvert pipes. They're replacing those the minute the fire's over. Where the fire crossed the road, they're digging these metal pipes up and replacing them with plastic or cement pipes. A normal wood combustion fire we know of has nothing to do with a metal pipe underground, but perhaps they're getting compromised from this weapon. And somebody's looking ahead and saying, hey, we changed these out. And I have pictures of that too, but I didn't want to include them. I have too much going on here. So if anybody wants to look at those, take a screenshot, a picture, this is what I find at all these fire sites. And any of my videos, you just punch in Forensic Arborist Robert on any website, and you'll see my other 14 videos, more in-depth talks. And like I said, I'm not the expert on this. I don't know where these weapons originate from. A lot of people say lasers, satellites, boats, ground-based. I don't know. I'm just trying to learn myself, but the evidence is everywhere at every aftermath. They're not natural at all. And I finish on my wildflower here. And that's about all I've got for my presentation. If there's any quick...
Robert, you want me to give you my take on what you're seeing?
Sure.
Plasma wave technology, of which directed ENERGY weapons is a subclass of. But plasma wave energy, plasma is kind of like lightning. That's where we see plasma. Plasma energy is a change of state technology. It changes something from solid to liquid or liquid to gas. These weapons that they mount that attack a tank, basically vaporize the tank, are basically changing the state of the metal from solid to liquid to gas and vaporizing things. So these technologies are these weapon systems that are mounted to planes, to drones, very easily can start the fire if they're dispersed. Now, just like when lightning strikes, what does lightning strike? It strikes something with mass. So lightning is not going to attack a tree if there's a car next to the tree. It's going to shoot that car because the car has mass and density. And it's going to heat up anything with density. It's going to ignore anything without density. You know, plastics and things like that, no density, but metals have density. A mobile home has a metal around it. Again, energy of these plasma wave technologies will be attracted toward the mobile home because there's a mass there. When you look at lightning strikes a tree and you see all the pictures of the tree, it burns from the inside at the base because the plasma energy, as soon as it hits the base of the tree, that's where it grounds out, creates intense heat on the inside. And you'll see the inside of the tree burning, but the outside not. And you'll see it from the base. That's exactly what we see in Maui and these other fires, is trees burning from the inside at the base. So where, back to the question, is it mounted on a plane? Is it mounted on a drone? Is it on the back of a pickup truck? Or is it maybe something from the secret space program that we don't even think about? I mean, we know the secret space program has, reverse engineered spacecraft that are able to move around at will and cloak themselves and be hidden. If I go deep down the rabbit hole and I think, what would they be using that wouldn't be seen? you know, I mean, a reverse engineered UFO ship that already has a plasma generator on it, because plasma generators, spinning plasma in a toroidal field, would create anti-gravity that makes an anti-gravity ship. And so they already have plasma generators on them. That'd be a really good thing. And they know how to cloak planes and cloak ships so they can cloak and not be seen. That's kind of what I'm leaning toward right now. What's the source? I mean, I don't know the source. I just know the technology was plasma wave technology, because it totally defines everything you're seeing.
Right. The thing I have to
Can
add
I
to
jump
that,
in? Can I jump in and ask a quick question?
sure.
I can interrupt, and that's what's the reason for doing this? And I've wondered if this is it's just part of the shock and awe to keep us in a sustained state of stress, we the people en masse in stress. Is it to demonstrate to your enemies the technological power you have to, I mean, are the Americans demonstrating to the Chinese what they can do, or is it multifold? At some point we do need to go to. I'm jumping in for Bruce to our next guest, but this is profound materials, and Bruce, I really am delighted that you're able to kind of connect this business of what's going on and flesh out the technology and the questions about that. But I mean, there are hands up already, but I'm going to pitch it back to Bruce. You don't have to answer that, Bruce Douglas, unless you want to.
Well, I will answer
our
it. And what
host.
was the first thing that came out of Governor Green of Hawaii mouth as soon as the fire happened? It was climate change, global warming, climate change, all because of climate change, climate change, climate change.
Yep.
So if you create these fires and you say, oh, it's all because of climate change that all this is happening, it produces a climate change agenda, which is one piece of what's
Yes,
happening. But
right.
again, these are psychopaths doing this stuff, and they don't operate the same way as you and I, who have a heart and we feel and have empathy.
So
These
this is
guys
just
who are
part of a
involved.
this is a globalist agenda.
Yes.
Exactly why they're doing all of this. We could go down rabbit holes, or we could think practically about just control and power and domination.
Yeah. I have the answer for that.
Go for it, Robert.
It's one of the pieces of Agenda 21. Get us out of the wildlands. Even smaller cities, they're burning those down. They want to make the case through fear to move us into the stack and pack mega cities and keep us there forever. And they're doing it everywhere. They're burning up small towns like I've never seen. And mobile homes get it first. They're the poorest people out in the country. I've taken note of that. Those are just incinerated really quick. But they're making the case to get us out and move to the city. And they're tripling your fire insurance or just dropping you completely. What happened to my girlfriend? 30 years of it, 40 years, dropped her. And they're just going to get us out of the countryside, and they're doing it incrementally everywhere and making up new rules for the wilderness areas and the national forests and national parks. They're constantly taking away our freedoms in the outdoors. And I see this. I do a lot of traveling in the mountains. So it's another piece of Agenda 21, sustainable city and all that crap. And they're going to herd us into the city and make nature off limits.
Hold on, hang on. This is a very interesting discussion. I want to get back to this. It's very important to talk about the Agenda 2021, Agenda 2030, all of that. But I'd like to hear from Justin and then kind of integrate him into this panel discussion, because there is a lot to explore here. I know there's a lot of questions that get raised when we go down this path. So just briefly, I want to hear from Justin. Give him the floor for his 15, 20 there. And then we'll round table it all and hash some of this stuff out. So briefly, our next guest, Justin Harvey. He's what I would consider a super activist. He's the founder of We Are Change Orlando, and he's consistently been tearing down the big psyops and fake agendas on the major social media platforms for over a decade, fighting against the censorship and the shadow banning to build up a very active community of followers. So definitely look him up and give him a follow at Justin_WeAreChange. His activism's focused on GMOs, water fluoridation, 5G, vaccines, and more. We've crossed paths a few times here in Florida as organizers of the annual March Against Monsanto. He was one of the major voices of the medical freedom movement here in Florida, speaking out against the lockdowns, the mask and vaccine mandates. And I even spoke at a rally that he organized at the height of the fake pandemic. One of his big wins during that time was bringing together dozens of firefighters to fight against the mandates, and even got the attention of Governor DeSantis, who eventually passed legislation to outlaw the COVID vaccine mandates. Now, Justin does the real work of organizing rallies, speaking at city council meetings, interviewing whistleblowers, and confronting politicians and elected officials with the tough questions. So he really understands how effective Civics 101 can be when applied in a strategic way. Justin, tell us what you know about the issue from your research over the years. Give us a summary, and then tie that into some of the legislation against geoengineering that was passed recently in Tennessee, and some of the next steps that we could take to keep moving the needle.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me again. My name's Justin with We Are Change Orlando. And, this subject has been a tricky one over the years because, as you mentioned, my activism has focused a lot on health, big food, big pharma, the chemical toxicity or the mass poisoning of our society that we all talk about. And this was a different one. Genetically modified foods are a real thing, and that's not debatable. The debate is on if they're safe and effective. The same thing with vaccines. We're not talking about if there's a COVID vaccine. We're debating if it's safe and effective. The chemtrail geoengineering topic has always been a little difficult because our elected officials, the mainstream science community, they don't admit its existence. So it's almost like, how do you address something that no one's willing to acknowledge yet? It's written off as a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory, right? I've always mentioned that it's very important with activism to focus on waves of momentum. So when there's a big whistleblower, a big documentary, you need to swell basically around that and use that, whether you do the protesting, the city council meetings, and just capitalize off that momentum and raise public awareness so that you can expose the issue and work towards the solutions. Well, I think we've finally gotten to that point for the first time ever with this topic. I think in the post-COVID world, a lot of people are just like, wait a minute, I don't just trust the science anymore. I'm not down for any, science experiments, no matter what it entails. And it's just a different time. And you can talk about the weather modification programs that date back decades. They used to be on the University of Florida website. I'm not sure if they still are. You can look into things like Project Popeye and Cirrus. There's government programs where they're modifying the weather, right? And we can talk about that. You can go into the whistleblower, Kristen Megan, talking about how these chemicals are being brought onto the Air Force Base. There's you can YouTube, pilots, doctors, and scientists talk about chemtrails. But I've almost gotten around that curve and said, okay, that's all there. But, in my experience, when you bring the science to your city council members, to your state legislators, they always got another scientist on their side to say, that's debunked, it's safe and effective, or it doesn't exist, right? So my advice going forward to everyone, if you want to get the attention of your local officials, let's start talking about this just in a preventative way. Forget convincing them that this has been going on in some form or fashion, which I truly believe it has. We could speculate till the cows come home of the methods and how they're doing it. And I find also the first gentleman, his speech was very, very interesting. I like what he had to say, and that's something to consider because I've also had my questions about, some of the anomalies with how we think this is all going on. But they have admitted that they're doing this. And I think that's the kicker that we all need to focus on. We've got, actually, am I able to share my screen?
Trina will make you a co-host, and then you will be able to share your screen.
Okay,
Got
great.
it, Justin. Go ahead, please.
Okay, I believe this is working here. All right. So what I'm talking about is essentially we've gotten to a point where they're ready to admit this. We've got the CIA director came out in 2016 and said, we're looking at ways to do stratospheric aerosol injections, blocking out the sun to save us from climate change. And this is what the activists told me back in 2014, 2015. I was told at protests, people talking about weather modification saying they're going to sell this to us. They're going to come out and they're going to say, we've got to do this or else we're all going to die from climate change effects. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. 2016 rolls around, the CIA director's giving speeches at the Council on Foreign Relations about this. Then you have this article I've got pulled up here, 2018. You're looking at controversial spraying method aims to curb global warming, CBS News. This is mainstream now. And then you've got Harvard. This is the CIA director I was talking about here. You've got Forbes, a Bill Gates venture aims to spray dust into the atmosphere to block the sun. Then just more recently, Joe Biden and the administration, the White House, have come out and said that they're considering studies to block the sun. Now, thankfully, this fell flat almost immediately. This was mocked on social media. I don't think this has been mentioned in the public arena since July of 2023 because this was so laughed off the stage. So that's very encouraging. But I point out these articles for you to take these examples to your state legislatures and say, look what they're trying to do to us. We don't have to split hairs and talk about when they started doing it, how they're doing it, if they're doing it. Just point to this right here and say, I don't want to be a guinea pig for another Bill Gates science experiment. We all just went through COVID. We know that we don't just trust the science anymore. Let's focus on that. And, go after those, your more right-leaning representatives that maybe didn't like the mask and the vaccine mandates. Those are going to be the people that you want to focus on. Let's see here. And then how do I get back to my... Sorry about that. All right. So, and the best news of all that I really want to touch on, and the main thing, is the bill that was passed. I was focusing on New Hampshire, thinking New Hampshire was going to be the first state to pass legislation relating to geoengineering weather modification. Well, sure enough, Tennessee was the first one. They passed a bill to prohibit this. Now, what's interesting is that I think we all know that it's not necessarily going to stop it. It's not necessarily a state-ran thing. How do you stop an above top secret or a classified program anyway? But I think that raising the awareness and sounding the alarm is exactly what we need to do. Just imagine if 40 states pass bills to outlaw geoengineering. That's going to be a major media story. People are going to be asking questions, and we're going to crack open that can of worms, and no one's going to be able to say or claim that this is not real, this isn't going on. And other great news is that 6 other states, you've got New Hampshire, Kentucky, Illinois, South Dakota, and Connecticut. That's 6 total, I'm sorry. So 5 other states, and Rhode Island, so it is 6, have all introduced legislation to do the same thing as Tennessee. So it's truly unprecedented. I did not expect to see the day when, BBC was going to be putting out an article saying that a state in the US has passed legislation to prohibit the modification of our weather. So these are really encouraging things, and that's really all you need right there. You contact your legislator, your county officials, and say, hey, we want to replicate this in our state. If you can't get your state representatives to listen, bump down to your county or your city officials. They can't really do much about it. But like Bruce and I worked on one time with the 5G issue, is we passed resolution in South Florida about 5G towers. Was it able to really get anything done? No, but it's almost like that first step in moving that first piece. I was bringing in firefighters and vaccine injured people to my county commissioner meetings, and everyone said, oh, they're never going to listen to you. They all believe in the pandemic and the vaccine, and they just say, next speaker, please. Well, that's true. But after I went in there 25 times with a dozen firefighters and a dozen vaccine injured, news cameras started showing up. The governor contacted us and said, hey, can we get some of these testimonies from these injured people? Can we talk to these firefighters? We actually started a snowball effect, and it was speaking in front of 6 people that did not care and were never going to do anything about it. So what I'm telling you is go in there and hijack your city council meeting in a good way, in a calm, respectful, factual way, educate them, bring the issues to light. If they say this is out of our purview, then you say, okay, fine. You go home, you download the video, you share it, you disseminate it, and you encourage others to go out and speak at their local, council meetings. I really can't stress enough the importance of that. Like Bruce mentioned, we had so much success speaking at our mayor's office against a county that was totally, totally opposed to everything that we were doing. Eventually, the governor stepped in and took away their power from enacting vaccine mandates on our firefighters and county employees. So we don't get a lot of wins in this community. A lot of times we just kind of get stomped out, and it was nice to actually get some help there. For the most part, I think that's everything that I kind of want to cover. I just can't stress the importance of people going to those meetings and making yourselves heard, even if you're the only one there, and even if you think it's not going to make a difference. Just your persistence and your creativity can go a long way. We ended up taking even an inflatable elephant to some of the meetings because we needed them to address the elephant in the room. And just like I said, creativity and persistence will finally get the attention of these people ignoring you.
Hey, can I jump in, Bruce? I'm going to put the spotlight on myself, and I just want to acknowledge young Justin Harvey, because in this movement, it's the 9/11 truthers and all that are elderly. I mean, we're all getting. I'm on the young end of the generational, but what you just demonstrated and effectively professed is a practical political angle as for truth action. In other words, bear witness, take up the time at the mic, at our city council meetings, futile as it might seem and feel. Your point is, it actually does generate, the waves, the pebble in the pond that reverberates out. And this is what TAP wants to be a hub for this kind of political activism, what I call a political truth movement. And the truth is, they're doing fucking weird shit to us in the way that Bruce described. In the end, we don't need to know the exact details of what's happening. We just need to take the stance of you've lied to us about JFK. You've lied to us about 9/11. You've lied to us about the COVID program. And now you're lying to us about what the hell's going on in our atmosphere. And I think we are a movement, and TAP is a educational, program, media centered. We want to build up a media political truth as we're doing tonight together, and we'll do on Friday. We'll continue this conversation at Campfire. But we do need to be thinking about organizing and having a coherent around the world reclaiming of nature from this emerging techno-totalitarianism run by a sociopathic technocracy that's populated by the elites, by selecting out those personality types that would accept, push the button and proceed. So I'm done. I've ranted almost, but I wanted to emphasize how important, Justin, that you're here tonight to participate in advancing this truther narratives around what's going on and introducing the idea that we politically engage. And I'll just close finally that TAP is interested in the grand jury appeal, taking appeals to our county prosecutors for grand jury to investigate on a host of harms being done to us. And on the theory of domestic violence, it's actually discussed in the Constitution, and that the federal government promises to protect states from domestic violence. We are being afflicted by domestic violence, whether it's the spraying, whether it's the faulty COVID program, or if it's the lies about chemicals. We need to reclaim and take back. I'm done. Bruce, Stanley, you get to moderate the roundtable conversation here. Very fascinating. This is a beautiful meeting that we're having. Being together, speaking truth to action. Chuck out.
Yeah, thanks, Chuck. That's a good point as far as the activism, because Justin, I mean, your videos speaking in front of these city council meetings. I mean, I see those all over the place. I mean, wouldn't you say that those have been your most viral videos, were when you basically went up to these little city? See, nobody does that. Nobody does that component of just figuring out how to sign up to speak at a local city commission or county commission meeting and get these things out there. But they're all recorded and it's all archived online on all the official local government websites. You just got to figure out how to navigate through them. You pull up the recording, pull out a clip of yourself. I mean, this is valuable, right? You might think you're just speaking, to a room of nobody, but when you grab that clip, the entire country can hear you, right? But you're doing it in important context. You're not just sitting there in your car, right, trying to talk about the issues. You're showing people you have to bring this home. You have to bring this to the government. When things bubble up in the government and you get one of these incredible precedents, that's when we see the real action and the dominoes start to fall. So it took many, many years of organizing and activism before we eventually got that win in Tennessee, but we're already starting to see that spread to other states. So yes, absolutely, that is the kind of activism and the civic engagement, the civics 101. I mean, we might all be very cynical about the government, but we understand that we still have responsibilities as citizens to understand how the bill flows through the committees, what you need to do to try to put a stop to it, right? So all that is very important information. I'm looking at our clock here. I see that we've got about 20 minutes left. Maybe one point that I guess I wanted to make with you, Justin, and then we can pivot into sort of an open discussion here is, we worked out as well on the 5G issue. And I don't know if you want to speak a little bit about how the science behind when you combine aluminum particulates with electromagnetic frequencies, and now all of a sudden, this generation is being bombarded by both of these things. We got the glyphosate in the food, we got the fluoride in the water, we've got the aerosols, they got the aluminum in the air, and now we're going to get cooked by EMFs on top of all that. And then, right? So talk a little bit about the interaction between the fact that we're now blanketed in electromagnetic frequencies in this day and age, combined with aluminum particulate matters. I mean, that's particularly a deadly combination, is it not?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm no scientist, but you can just logically look at the toxic soup that we're in, where we've got such a toxic environment and there's so many variables. How do we know what's causing what? That's what the debate is. It's like, well, is the autism coming from this, or this? We've got, like you said, the glyphosate, the Wi-Fi radiation, and we don't even know our current exposure levels. That was one of the big things I always try to tell the media is that, we're complaining about increasing from 4G to 5G and building all these towers on every corner. And, we don't even know the exposure levels we're getting from our vehicle, your electric car, or your cell phone and your router, and all these different methods. And how are we supposed to pinpoint what's causing the cancer? Was it the food I ate? Was it the stuff that was sprayed on my food? Was it the stuff that's coming from this tower down the street? And again, I'm not an expert, but it doesn't take, I think, a rocket scientist to think that, little pieces of metal mixed with microwave frequencies. We all know what happens when we put aluminum foil in a microwave, right? Well, if they're filling us up, ourselves, our bodies up with little tiny bits of metal, and they can crank up these towers, I can't imagine it's a good thing. I don't know much beyond that, but these towers are essentially doubling as like a military microwave weapon if they wanted it to. I can't prove that that's what they're doing with them, but could they? You've got things that they've examples like the weapons they've used in Iraq, like the voice of God weapon in 2001. Think about that. This is like 20 years ago. They had the ability to put voices in the enemy's head and tell them that God was telling them to put their weapons down. I mean, that's some kind of crazy stuff. They can pulse out a frequency from these machines to make it feel like your skin is burning or that you're hearing voices in your head. I mean, that's like some ultimate crowd control, if you ask me, if that is on every corner. A lot of people don't think it's really for your cell phone service. I don't think anybody's gotten anything, any benefits from 5G. It's been more of a nothing burger on its face. So it's a dangerous scenario. There's definitely major health and privacy implications. Not only is it pulsing out high amounts of radiation and you might be sleeping next to one of these towers, but they can use this stuff to like see inside your house, and they're going to be monitoring every single moving product that has a barcode or an RFID chip. I mean, that's the goal. And this all goes into that Agenda 2030 smart city plan. It's all in that basket. Cram us into those, stack them and pack them, like someone mentioned. And that's really what they want to do. So we've just got to educate people and you know, push back on these agendas and keep it from, you know, just moving full steam ahead.
Right, very good. Yeah, I mean, it seems that one of the themes that we've been touching on a lot here in our talk tonight is about how all this hype that we hear about climate change and have been is actually geoengineering. You know, that's what's changing the climate. But we're always told that it's about the CO2, it's about our consumption, you know, of fossil fuels. All right, so we got about 15 minutes left on the clock. Maybe we want to kind of talk about, you know, Agenda 2030, you know, type of stuff. I see Paul Delorier is here, who was on the last show, and I would be curious what he might have to say. Let's see if we want to pull you up and.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead really quick. We're trying to do an open a rapid fire round table here. So if you could keep it brief. Yeah, we do want to hear from you. Go ahead.
Justin, thank you, first of all, and Robert and Bruce, again, one of my partners at the Maui Community Investigation. And also, we started the Maui Pono Network back in 2018. And it's about systemic change. And I think that what we're looking at here is becoming consciously aware of what's happening, but what strategic action can we take? I think, Justin, you've hit on it in terms of going to the county council meetings or city meetings, but even more impactful is to get involved in the local elections, especially with the county council members. It can be anywhere from 3, 7, 9, so that you have to get the majority. So here in Maui County, we have 9 county council members. That means we have to get 5. We did that for the first time in 2018, where for the first time really in 125 years, that we've had a majority of progressives who support the people in the INA instead of big money interest. So from that, we have then got involved with changing the laws. It's our charter, that's our constitution as a county level. We passed 19 charter amendments in 4 years. And that's pretty much unprecedented. I was one of the charter commissioners actually that we had in 2022. Where every 10 years they elect 11 citizens from the county to help change the laws, and I was one of them. And I'm telling you, I think, to me, I think that's one of the reasons why we may have gotten all of a sudden these huge amount of mosquitoes that got released in July, and then that got followed up by our August 8th fire in Lahaina, which has been devastating to our community. So I'll just sign off with that. But I think that going to the root of systemic change goes to the county level or city or town level and get the legislators, which is the county council primarily, or the council members, get the majority there. You change everything, and that's where systemic change can really take root and create a significant shift. I'll end it there.
Thank you so much, Paul, for joining us. I'm glad you brought that up, because, you know, when I was researching it back, I encourage everybody to check out Paul Delorier's work and go listen to his interview on the Ralph Nader show. I mean, before he was, you know, the specialist in the Maui fires, you know, he was a big advocate for, you know, creating community change through the direct civics process. And you were more successful than, you know, the average group of loose-knit ragtag group of activists who their only goal is to try to change a law, maybe get a commissioner elected. You change the entire government almost single-handedly, which is amazing. And the success that you experienced with doing all that, I think that you pretty much articulated the model there. And I know you've got a number of books specifically about this subject. So I don't know if you have another 20 seconds to say about any of that. It's a very interesting subject here. There's a lot that can be said. Everybody who's here, please sign up for the campfire this coming Friday so we can continue the discussion in sort of an extended Q&A about all this, because I know we've got a lot of questions, we've got hands popping off. I'm sure there's a lot of things on people's minds. Who haven't we heard from? Robert, do you have anything for us? And then I guess we'll pivot over to Bruce and then Justin.
About the only thing I notice is here at home in the Bay Area, with all these sprays, I have several different plants, 3 or 4 different plants that are unrelated families, and all of them, all the leaves turn silver on top, and it wasn't on the surface, it was internal in these plants. A fern, a vine, a rose bush, and I've never seen this in my life, and all 3 almost died, and miraculously I got them back to life. But whatever they're spraying us, it gets internally, the plants are bringing it in, and these leaves turn silver. I've never seen anything like that. So if anybody wants to expand on what that might be, that's about all I had to offer.
Hey, could we ask someone? I'd like to hear from either Bruce or Paul, just to loop back to Maui, Hawaii, and the kind of the motivation for this. I mean, we're all, as truthers, cui bono, who benefits? That just drives the skeptical kind of, antenna looking for. So, Bruce, and just briefly, because we are kind of, we're going to at some point end our recording. We could extend our recording. This is a beautiful program. I mean, is the simple globalist, objective to, control the masses, depopulate, coal, whatever you want to use?
There has been a big push to make Maui the next Honolulu. And the problem is there's no place to create another Honolulu because all the coastal spots are taken. But certainly if you take out Lahaina, the old place where lots of Hawaiians and local people live, and you burn that out, then you could create that into the next, Honolulu, Waikiki Beach type of scene, which was certainly the governor's intention when the first fires first happened. They said, oh yeah, state's going to snap it all up and we're going to, create something really great there, until the population of Maui got together and said, oh no, you're not, it's going to be decided by the locals. And they had to back down from that. But that will still be one of the ongoing fights. And certainly to propagate the climate change, global warming agenda, because that's the only thing our Governor Green talked about relentlessly, was how this is all because of climate change.
Well, okay.
And I just want to say another thing too. Maui was unique in terms of the community. We have this thing called the ohana, which basically family, and really there is that whole sense of aloha spirit that exists. And when people saw the stress that our community was in Lahaina, they came together like you wouldn't believe. The other islands, it was incredible. But they took ownership for the response. They didn't rely on, a lot of these other agencies of FEMA and Red Cross. Instead, they said, no, we're going to do this ourselves. And the response was absolutely incredible. We had all these different hubs for our community. And the same thing that we're doing right now. We took responsibility for our government. And that's why in 2018, Bruce and a whole bunch of us, we got together and we say, no, we're taking responsibility. We're taking our governance back from these big money interests. And I think that if you look in terms of what motivates, I think, first of all, a foundational piece of that is taking responsibility and saying that this is my home, this is my community, and I'm not going to allow this type of thing to happen. So that's what we did in terms of our governance. That's what we're doing right now with the Maui Community Investigation, because we're seeing the Underwriter Laboratories is involved with doing the official government investigation, which basically, for all the 9/11 truthers, that they were involved in this report and what that involved. So again, I think that taking responsibility and saying, no, we're not going to allow this, and use that then to motivate action and get with other people at the same time. I know We Are Change, Justin, has been going on for a long time. I was involved early on also with 9/11, and so I certainly got to know some of those guys over there. So but it takes that responsibility.
Does John Olson have a question? He had his hand up long time ago. John's actually a radical libertarian type who believes in freedom and has written about Hawaiian history and the grounds that they're essentially occupied. But then I'm going to pitch it back, Bruce. And if people have questions on this, I mean, I'd love to hear from people. I'd say we keep this open a little bit here and record reflections, because we got to the core for what do you do with this? You know, we've taken people to the unspeakable, and the unspeakable is that something we're looking into that pit of evil, you know, and what do you do with that? And well, you engage in it is what Justin is counseling us, and I accept. But John, we're going to put the spotlight on you.
Okay, real briefly here. I was going to comment, but I'll save that part for the fire chat to talk more about the chemtrails issue, which we see here in Maine all the time. But I think the whole issue of Hawaiian sovereignty and rejecting U.S. governance is at the core of what Paul was just raising. Having lived there a long time, it became part of me as well. And I continue to root for and try to promote Hawaiian sovereignty. And by Hawaiian, I mean the people of Hawaii, not just the native Hawaiians, because it is a national issue and not an ethnic issue. So I think that's so relevant, and it's well along in Hawaii, as those of you who live there on Maui know very well. So I guess I'll just leave it at that, because time is at the end right now.
All right, so I guess we're pretty much in our last 5 minutes here. I don't know how we want to close this out. I know we had briefly touched on the whole Agenda 2030 concept. I know that's a pretty big one to try to unpack. I don't know, we have a couple words for that. I mean, really, my closing thought that I wanted to say is when I was doing my own research, putting this all together, I was surprised at the level of at the extent of the coverage that this topic of geoengineering is covered within government documents. There is a lot of government documentation on this, even though there is the official denial. So yes, that John Brennan's speech, I would definitely, even Lyndon Johnson, I came across a clip where he was talking about who controls the weather controls the world, and then this policy wonk, this guy David Keith, I definitely recommend seeing the way that he went on the Colbert Show and openly promoted a lot of the geoengineering stuff that that is considered conspiracy. He's an open promoter of it, and he's even said some pretty scary things, almost like Bill Gates tier, about I mean, if we do this, we might kill 10,000 people. And there's this awkward silence, and it's like, oh well, we're not trying to do that. It's like, what is going on here? So this is part of how they use the predictive programming to drop it into the subconscious without actually fully addressing it. So in our last couple of minutes, I don't know if anyone has any final closing thoughts. Should we do a roundtable, a 60-second closing thoughts roundtable from our guest speakers? What do you guys think?
Yeah. I've got just a quick couple resources I can drop for you all. If anyone wants to learn more about, the climate change agenda and how it sort of was pursued by the Rockefeller interest and hijacked the environmental movement, James Corbett does some great work on that. He's got 2 documentaries called How Big Oil Conquered the World and Why Big Oil Conquered the World. James Corbett, I think it's corbettreport.com. And also Rosa Koire, last name is Koire. She wrote a great book about Agenda 21. The name of the book slips me right now.
Behind the Green Mask. I've got my own copy of it. Everybody's got to read Behind the Green Mask, Rosa Koire.
Yeah, she wrote a great book. So if you really want to take a deep dive, I'm sure you can, look up documentaries on it as well. But that book really covers it. She did some good work.
Very good. All right, Robert.
I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to be on I'll come on Friday's fireside chat for people who want to continue questions, get clarifications. So I'll be there. I have a website with a couple of videos on it. I haven't updated it in 10 years, but it's got relevant videos called MauiSkywatch.org. MauiSkywatch.org. And yeah, I think it's great that all these states now are finally, passing anti-geoengineering legislation. And now we just have to get the correct science out there. So we're actually talking about the right thing and not the wrong thing, because it's easy to debunk the chemtrail situation. And I'm kind of the opinion now that I think a lot of the chemtrail stuff was purposely put out there as misinformation to have people looking over there instead of looking over here. It's like, don't look at the source, look at the result over here, and have something that you can do it. And then they get a bunch of angry tin hat people out there, acting all crazy, and people go, oh, I don't want to be a part of that group. They're all a bunch of crazy wackos, and then you can kind of push it all off to the side. So I love the legislation that's coming forward. We need more of that, and I just hope we can get our science right.
Very good. I agree. It's one of these topics that's going to need to be teased out and explored. The fringe topics. There's so much disinformation. Robert, do you have a 30 seconds closing thoughts for us?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to all your guests. They're all way above me, and I've learned so much tonight. It's late here in the Bay Area. It's 7 o'clock, but I just learned so much, and it's opened a lot of windows for me. And I'm just thankful you let me on your show to speak my piece. I'm just a little botanist that saw the anomalies, and I got to do something about it at my little level and do my part. That's about all I have to say.
Great. Yeah, actually, no, you're doing great work. And I don't know, you're going to continue going on around the podcast circuit. I don't know if you have a social media account or a website or anything like that to promote, or how anybody could find your work.
I've got a couple new friends, Deborah Tavares and Matt, the fire captain that analyzed Paradise with John Lord, and also Edward Griffin, Red Pill University, wrote the book Creature from Jekyll Island. He's making me write a book, and he'll probably edit it and put his 2 cents into it, sell it on his website probably. All about the fires, and it'd probably be called Microwave Forest Fires. For now, that's what I.
There it is. Well, that'll surely put you on the map. All right, folks.
Let's make it plasma wave forest fires, so we actually get it right.
Okay.
Because they're not microwaves. That's a different phenomena that couldn't do what you're seeing, but plasma waves could.
Okay.
It's the only technology that we have that we know of on this planet that could do what we're seeing and explains all of it.
Okay. All that lightning too that comes down, that's not natural lightning.
That's because of aerosols, because the aerosols are ionic particle. It ionizes the atmosphere. It creates the condition for lightning. Like Hawaii never used to get lightning ever. Maybe one clap once in a while. And it wasn't until about 20 years ago and 25 years ago when they started the aerosol programs that now we get lightning storms. And for me, that's actually a key that I know if they're predicting a lightning storm, that means it's an aerosol generated, because otherwise we wouldn't have lightning.
Thank you for that.
Amazing stuff. All right, guys, we're going to keep this conversation rolling on Friday, same time, same place. Be sure to register. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for our guests for putting these presentations together. Please, check us out at truthactionproject.org. Stay in touch with us, and we're going to keep bringing you the best truth, the best conversations in the truth community. All right, so that's our presentation for tonight, and that was all that I had.
The recording has stopped.